The proposed 2019 defense budget is one of the biggest in recent memory. To break it all down, I spoke with Bloomberg government analyst Cameron Luthi. So Cameron, for those that aren't really follow the budget as closely as you and I, what's different about this budget than what we've kind of seen in past budgets?
Well, there are two things that jump out. First is it's a $85 billion jump for 18 and 19. So you get a boost for defense across the board, including defense activities outside of DoD. The second thing that's of interest and makes this somewhat different is the administration came out with their new strategy in the fall. It's not exactly synced up, but the budget does reflect that new strategy.
And so with that, I mean, obviously you have to adjust for inflation, but is this really, we hear from the White House and the administration all the time about how it's such a huge, we're restoring America's military and pouring all this money to it. Is that accurate?
Well, it's fair up to a point. The deal that raised the caps on defense spending is only for 18 and 19. In the out years, in 2020, 2021, the budget would come back down under current law. So it's one of those things where the proof is in the pudding. It's going to be another negotiation in a year and a half from now about whether or not we can increase defense spending. Because if you don't do it consistently year over year, you're not going to realize the full potential of what you're starting this year.
So with all that we kind of see in this budget, people say it's almost a placeholder. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a little bit more than a placeholder. Last year, it definitely was a placeholder. Most of the cake was baked before the administration came in. You know how long the lead time is for putting a budget together. The new strategy is reflected to some degree, but there's parts of this budget that are sort of business as usual.
Got it. So with all that, what you've been kind of looking through this budget since it's been released and everything like that, walk me through some of the nuggets you've found. Anything particularly interesting or just random that we haven't seen in past ones?
I think one of the biggest nuggets, if you will, is the degree to which some of the R&D is towards the latter stages of the acquisition life cycle for the Army in particular, is very heavily oriented towards Russia. Research for Russia, you might say. There's money for long-range precision fires, upgrading MLRS. There's money for comm systems, cybersecurity. We all know the Army network's in bad shape. So that's a nugget you could take away.
Got it. And with all of what we're seeing, President's budget is very much a, here's my ideas, let's actually start talking and come to the negotiating table. Do you see the budget and its current number being enacted, or do you see it going up or down before Congress finally gets done wrestling with it?
I think that with the new caps and the budget agreement that created those, I think that the top line won't be the argument. There'll be arguments about individual programs, you know, what's going on with JSTARS, what's going on with WIN-T, what's going on with some of the Air Force satellite programs. That's where the argument will be, not on the top line.
And that's different from past years.
Right, right. I mean, you know, over the last several years, we sort of had this cycle of presidents asking for more than the caps allow, and then Congress going back and forth and finding an agreement that lasts only a couple of years, and then you're right back where you started 2 years later, fighting about the top line.
Another part of this budget trend was OCO, and it's been a fight. You have Mick Mulvaney, who's famously said, you know, the OCO is just a giant slush fund for the Pentagon. Yet OCO was fairly unchanged this year, even under our second real Mulvaney budget in a way. Do you see him jumping down on that anymore and OCO being reformed? Or?
Well, he got part of what he wanted because it's true. The analysis, lots of people around town have pointed this out, there's money in the OCO budget that doesn't belong there. That's really for base requirements. And the administration says the reason that OCO didn't grow is because with more room in the base, they took about $20 billion out of OCO and moved it into the base. That's the right thing to do from a good government standpoint. That's a win for Mulvaney. Is he satisfied? Probably not.
Knowing Mulvaney, he won't be happy until almost the entire OCO budget is gone with looking at all with what he said. But as we kind of wrap up a little bit here, with what we see in this budget, we hear from Deputy Secretary Shanahan, 2020, that's the masterpiece budget. What do you think might be different in the masterpiece, so to speak? What reflects certain strategies, certain reviews? What are you seeing?
One of the things that we're going to be watching is the degree to which emerging technologies get more money. I mean, put your money where your mouth is. So artificial intelligence, autonomy, and those two in combination, air, land, sea, all of those arenas, and I think directed energy is another area. There's a big jump in the Navy's directed energy budget this year, and I would expect more of that in the 2020 budget.
Well, that gets back, though, to the whole Pentagon argument, which has been going on for years, of readiness versus modernization, readiness versus modernization. Some would argue that every money you invest in AI is one less tank coming out of a modernization line, or one less aircraft rolling off the line. What do you say to that?
Well, it's a trade-off that's been discussed since the previous administration, when Hagel was SecDef, this capability versus quantity argument. And he leaned heavily on increasing the technological capability, not increasing the size of the force. President Trump has pushed for more increases in end strength, but not as much as some people might have anticipated. I think the thrust coming out of the Pentagon next budget is going to be all about high tech.
Great. Cameron, thanks for talking with us. We really do appreciate it.
Great to be with you.